Welcome. I'm James Ford, and I'm the guiding teacher for our Empty Moon Zen Sangha. Today is our Saturday morning program, and so glad that you could join us. The story. Our founding ancestor was facing the wall. A student on the intimate way, Wei Kei, while standing in the snow, cut off his arm and presented it to the master. He said, "My mind is anxious. I beg you, teacher, please set it at rest." Bodhidharma replied, "Bring me your mind, and I will set it to rest." Wei Kei wailed, "I have searched thoroughly, and I cannot find it." The founding ancestor responded, "I have set it completely at rest for you." The story is captured in the Gateless Gate as case 41. I've been reflecting quite a bit of late about those places where the world's different religions might touch. And so I was quite taken with the religious scholar Stephen Prothero when in his book, God is Not One, he observed what the world's religions share is not so much a finish line as a starting point. That starting point, he suggests, is that something is wrong in the world. Each of the religions offer somewhat different takes on what that wrong is, and of course that means they then offer rather different solutions. Where one begins often dictates where one ends up. So, perhaps it's a good idea to look at some of these different starting places. It might tell us something about who we are, and we might even catch a glimpse of some larger truths. Of the list offered by the good professor, my third favorite, or perhaps it's third and fourth, they're tied up together, are Taoism and Confucianism. Confucianists see the problem as chaos, while the Taoists see the problem as lifelessness. One old joke, actually it might be an observation rather than a joke, from medieval China is that the scholar class, they're all Confucianists, win they have a job, but Taoists when they don't. There's something inside that play I find compelling. There is chaos threatening lives and families and cultures, and there are more stifling dead letter pronouncements within religion than one can shake a dozen sticks at. That noted, my second favorite tradition is Judaism, at least in Prothero's definition of their understanding of the universal problem as exile. I so get that sense of dislocation from something that can be called home. Some great movement from exile toward a dreamed of home feels like the direction of life, like a flower turning toward the sun. I also find the social component of this vision important. That communal aspect isn't explicit, but it's hard to see either exile or return without someone waiting at home. All this acknowledged, the story that most informs me, the analysis of the problem, certainly as the problem for the individual human heart, is dukkha. Dukkha is our Buddhist observation of that universally acknowledged wrongness. It is commonly translated as suffering, which is true, but insufficient. Dukkha is hurt, unsatisfactoriness, unhappiness, anguish, angst. It is existential dread. It is the half of a worm we find in the apple of life. The connoisseur of sadness might notice three aspects to dukkha. The first is the range of physical and psychological hurts to which we are subject just being bodies. The second is the hurt of our constantly encountering change, the bruises, the wounds. And the third is the suffering of existence itself, that existential dread. Anyone who studies Buddhism will find dukkha front and center in either of the two great summations of the Buddha way, the Four Noble Truths and the 3 marks, sometimes 4 marks, of existence. Please forgive this tiny bit of unpacking. It's really important. The Buddhist marks of existence are, first, the reality of impermanence, that is, all things change. Second, the reality of insubstantiality, that is, no thing or person has any part to them, us, that isn't subject to causes and conditions or can escape change. And third, the reality of dukkha, of hurt, suffering, angst, that endlessly bubbling sense of dissatisfaction. And some good news. The 4th mark is liberation. I like that it's right there at the beginning, crowding up with the problems. Perhaps you can also see it as returning home. In that ancient map of Zen's path, the 10 ox herding pictures, the final image isn't an experience of oneness, or as we Buddhists tend to prefer, emptiness. It isn't at one-ment with nature. Both are moments on the way. We pass through those. Actually, we revisit them and all other steps, the less pleasant ones and the beautiful moments, over and over. The fluidity of all this noticed, the last of the ox herding pictures is an old person wandering into the village, as one version tells us, with bliss-bestowing hands. The critical element here is the assertion that we exist within a flow of causes and effects, that reality, both the physical reality within which we live and breathe and take our being, and our inner reality, the stories that we weave out of our experiences as beings moving through space and time, are from one angle as real can be. There is an I, you experience it, I experience it. It can hurt, it can be nourished, and your body and all bodies are real and subject to joy and sorrow. And yet, from another angle, each thing as it arises, including you and me, is merely a moment in the play of causes and conditions. Nothing is extricable from the play of rising and falling, of the great web of existence. And that includes our end, our deaths. Personally, I call that play of causes and conditions the buzz. It is the buzz of reality interacting with itself. All things hum with this play of things. But for us as human beings, this hum, this buzz, manifests as anxiety, or as some Western thinkers put it, existential angst, existential dread. You know, dukkha. What is important is that if this is the problem, then Buddhism really offers a solution. Several, in fact. Although I believe they're all complementary. And that takes us to case 41 in the Gateless Gate. It ranks as one of the foundational stories of our way, an epitome of Buddhism, and how Zen specifically engages the great question of human suffering. Our founding ancestor was facing the wall. A student on the intimate way, insert your name here, while standing in the snow, cut off his arm and presented it to the master. She said, "My mind is anxious. I beg you, teacher, please set it at rest." Bodhidharma replied, "Bring me your mind and I will set it to rest. Please add your name here." She wailed, "I have searched thoroughly and I cannot find it." The founding ancestor responds, "From all the ancestors, with all the many hosts, I have set it completely at rest for you." Liberation is the fourth mark of existence, usually called Nirvana or Nibbana, depending on the textual tradition you prefer. The etymology of the word suggests a snuffing out. For many on the Buddhist path, it means an ending to the otherwise endless cycles of rebirths, caught up in this endlessly exhausting web of suffering. In some schools of Buddhism, the path to liberation is long. It takes many lifetimes and much hard practice in order to liberate oneself from the shackles of this hurting life. But here, with Zen, something else is on offer, or a different angle, like wave and particle, each true as true from one angle. I don't know which should be wave, which should be particle, but within the great way tradition, of which Zen is a part, there's that other angle on nirvana. It tends to prefer the word awakening. In a nutshell, if there is no other place, then the place of our liberation is nowhere other than the place of our suffering. So, liberation can be found as a letting go of a death grip. It is as easy as awakening from a dream. Bodhidharma asks you, where is there a substance, something permanent? And we can't find it. The response can seem a splash of cold water in the face, and it can be misunderstood. And so, let me be clear. This is a new world and a new heaven that we're being invited into. And yes, as it might seem from the way the answer is given, in part it involves an attitude adjustment. We suffer in part because we cannot accept the way things are. So, stop doing that. Let go and let it be. And there's more on offer, a lot more. We're invited into that place with the old person and those bliss-bestowing hands. We're being invited into worlds beyond simple acceptance and variations on mental health. Those can and do happen, and that's wonderful. But actually, it is nothing compared to the real promise of the Zen way, the fix to Zen's understanding of the ancient wound. This is a dropping ever further into a reality we miss when we're clinging to our stories, our opinions, our certainties. Here, we wake from the dream of an ego-centered universe into a larger consciousness. We need the ego. It allows us to function. But as the certainties begin to fall away and we discover it is a dream world all the way down, our actions can become more graceful. We learn to join the flow of life. We take up this way with open hearts, and in time our hearts actually open. This is the promise of the Zen schools of Buddhism, like a bolt of lightning, like a lover's whisper, like an unfolding flower. This very place is the Lotus Land. It is Zion. It is heaven. And I find, from this place, we genuinely can hear those other stories, the ones about chaos and freedom. I think especially about that one about an exodus. And we discover within the flow of our human dreaming, they all do speak some truths. And their dreaming and those truths can and do become ours. When we find this place, how can we be anything but grateful? Here's the place of that broken hallelujah. The buzz never goes away, but we discover it is the gentle roar of an ocean. Wave and depth, spray and current are true nature. Sadness and joy woven fine, our true home.